Welcome back to the Deep Dive. If you're joining us, well, you probably know the drill by now. We take a custom stack of sources, really get into them, and try to synthesize the kind of knowledge you need.
Right. No surface skimming here.
Exactly. And today, we're looking at something pretty unique. It's not just a management theory, it feels much deeper. It's like a personal philosophy that doubles as a blueprint for, well, holistic leadership on a global scale.
It really is. Our focus today, it's rooted in this very profound synthesis. We're digging into the cycle of presence, East meets West leadership.
That's the one, by Lóng Tíng, the CEO of Lóng Tíng Enterprises.
Yeah, and this material is, I think, crucial because it's not just describing a bridge between cultures. It's really about how you or anyone can become that bridge.
Absolutely. And that's our mission for this deep dive, isn't it? To really unpack this core concept of presence. It's the idea he uses to connect everything, it seems.
Everything. Traditional Eastern wisdom, the hard demands of modern business structures, diverse global viewpoints. It all comes together.
So we're aiming for a kind of shortcut, a clearer understanding of how this whole framework operates, not just in theory, but like as a practical operating system.
And to get there, we really have to start with the foundation, his philosophical grounding, the author's own dual roots.
Right, he talks about being born in Europe. And he has this phrase, where the clock rules the heart.
It's so evocative, isn't it? It just paints this picture of life governed by linear time, schedules, efficiency, relentless forward motion. You know, a culture where your worth is often tied to what you achieve minute by minute.
Yeah, it sets up the contrast immediately. Because even though he's steeped in that Western structure, he describes this constant search for something else, another pulse.
A different cadence. He calls it slower, circular, almost like the hush before a gong.
It's a search for meaning, isn't it? Something the clock just can't measure.
Precisely. And this search leads him straight into the core paradox that seems to drive all his work. That the really impactful connections, the real bridges, they're often invisible. He writes, they can rise in the invisible, between breath and thought, between two ways of seeing the world.
So not bridges of concrete and steel, but consciousness.
Intentional consciousness, exactly, constructed right there in that invisible space.
What's so interesting, though, is he doesn't just dismiss the Western view. He sees its power.
Yeah.
Right. The movement, the progress, the activity.
Oh, absolutely. And crucially, how the West often equates that progress directly with worth. Productivity is value.
But the East, the tradition he's trying to integrate, speaks a different language. Rhythm, continuity, reverence.
Reverence is a key word there. Reverence for the moment, for the past, for the natural flow of things.
So that sets up the main tension, the big question he has to grapple with. How do you actually reconcile these two? The Western drive for measurable, often aggressive progress, all that doing, with the Eastern emphasis on rhythm, contemplation, just being.
It's a huge challenge. If you move too fast, you shatter the reverence, right? But if you only revere, you might just get stuck. Institutional paralysis, as you said. And the solution he lands on, the thing that holds it all together, is this quality he calls presence.
Okay, let's unpack that, the genesis of this idea. Because as you said, it wasn't cooked up in some lab. It grew out of real experiences, didn't it? Starting with this moment of, well, cultural friction that turned into something more.
That's right. It starts with a really specific, quite poignant encounter in a quiet courtyard in Munich, of all places.
Okay.
He describes seeing an elderly grandmother playing the gushing.
Ah, the Chinese zither, that long instrument with the strings.
Exactly, a very classical Chinese instrument. It produces this deep, resonant, very traditional sound. Imagine hearing that in a German courtyard. It would definitely stand out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the thing was, there was no shared language between them, no English, and his Chinese was limited at the time. But he describes this silence flowing between them that felt, quote, older than language.
Wow. Older than language.
And the realization hit him, not intellectually, but intuitively. He just knew the strings were vibrating, not for a show, not for applause from people walking by.
But for
Belonging. That was the word.
belonging versus applause.
Yeah,
that's a huge distinction.
It's everything, really. It's like feeling home in a sound, as he put it, you were never taught to name. It suggests identity, connection, run deeper than just conversation or overt culture.
It really speaks to that deep emotional current running through his search, doesn't it? He mentions that feeling of Heimweh.
Yes, that very specific German word, that deep longing or homesickness. But in his case, it was almost like homesickness for a home that didn't actually raise him, a cultural root he had to actively seek out.
And the Gusheng moment gave that feeling an anchor.
Exactly. It shifted it from just a passive ache, a longing, into something active, a path of self-discovery.
So that's the passive realization, belonging found in stillness and sound. But then it becomes an active principle, right? When he encounters the Kachude master in Japan.
Yes, this is the crucial next step. This is where that internal feeling starts to get translated into a discipline, something operational.
You do that Japanese archery.
It is, but it's so much more than just archery. It's really a spiritual discipline. The focus is entirely on uniting mind, body, technique. He observed a master drawing his bow.
Man.
And it wasn't just about aiming at the physical target. The way he described it was, the master drew his bow as if drawing breath from the earth.
Drawing breath from the earth. So the whole purpose shifts. It's not just hitting the bullseye.
Not primarily, no. The source material really emphasizes this. The goal isn't the arrow's flight or where it lands. The real purpose is becoming, internally, still.
Yeah.
Still enough for the world to move through you.
Still enough for the world to move through you. Okay,
Okay.
let's unpack that because that's pretty radical, isn't it?
It is.
It means stillness isn't the opposite of action anymore. It actually becomes the action or the source of it.
Precisely.
Because, for a typical Western leader, time spent being still, that often feels like wasted time, a luxury, maybe even procrastination.
Right. Lost productivity.
But Ting is arguing the opposite. That maximum effectiveness, peak performance, only comes from maximum internal alignment, maximum presence.
That's the core transformation. When a leader reaches that internal stillness, the action that follows isn't effortful in the same way. It's inevitable. It's precise. It's action without waste, without noise.
And that's the key insight he wants to bring into running Lóng Tíng Enterprises, leading from that aligned, still center.
That's the ambition, yes.
But okay, let me push back slightly. Focusing so much on rhythm, on internal stillness, doesn't that risk, well, slowing things down too much? Especially in today's super competitive global market. How does he stop that stillness from becoming, institutional slowness in a modern company?
That's a fair question, and he addresses it by insisting it's about the synthesis of strength. It's not about choosing East over West or vice versa. Because you're right, the slowness of the East, if it's not balanced, it can lead to inertia. Just like the relentless speed of the West, unbalanced, leads to burnout and meaninglessness. So he actively sought to distill the specific gifts from each side.
Okay, so what were those specific gifts, the building blocks for this synthesis he created?
Well, from Europe, from the West, he identifies clarity, structure, and really importantly, the courage to question, to analyze, deconstruct, challenge the status quo.
The engine of innovation, in a way.
You could say that. And then from Asia, from the East, he draws on rhythm, reverence, as we discussed, and the courage to listen.
Which he suggests is maybe even harder than questioning.
Often, yes, because true listening requires silence, internal and external. And that silence, that active listening, is the absolute precondition for presence.
Got it. And initially, he thought his job was just translation, trying to explain that Heimweh, that longing for the other pulse, to the structured European mindset.
That was the first impulse, yes. But trying to translate actually led him to realize translation wasn't enough. It wasn't the real task.
Why not?
Because translation implies you're finding an equivalent, saying the same thing, just in different words. But these two worldviews, East and West, they aren't really equivalent, are they? They're complementary forces, different energies.
So you can't just translate one into the other?
Exactly. He realized the goal wasn't translation, it had to be transformation.
Transformation.
Yeah.
How does that manifest? What does that mean practically?
It means that when you stand between two worlds, like he does, like any global leader increasingly must, the purpose isn't just to compare them, not to say, oh, this one's more efficient or this one's more spiritual.
Okay.
The purpose is to allow yourself, as the leader, to be fundamentally changed by both. To become the crucible, the container where these powerful, sometimes conflicting elements can merge and create something new, something coherent that integrates both.
So the leader becomes the point of synthesis.
Yes, it's a commitment to ongoing systemic change within the leader's own internal structure. You don't just learn about both worlds, you let both worlds reshape you.
Okay, so we've got this deep internal realization, the stillness of the Kidu master. Now, how does that translate into the day-to-day reality of running an international business? Lóng Tíng Enterprises. I mean, that world is often noisy, fast-paced.
Right. And the answer is the philosophy is the engine. It's not separate. Lóng Tíng, which by the way translates beautifully as dragon thunder, a great mix of East and West right there.
Dragon thunder. Nice.
That enterprise is built on this crossing. The source material is clear. Everything the organization creates grows from the synthesis. It's not like a CSR initiative on the side. It's the core operating mission.
Which is?
Turning different cultural difference, perspective difference into actual continuous dialogue.
And they don't just stick to boardroom tables for that dialogue, do they? He mentions using art, music, diplomacy, technology, calls them languages of connection.
Exactly. It's an acknowledgement that some of the most important points of connection, of understanding, they can't always be captured in a spreadsheet or a quarterly report.
It feels like they're building the emotional and cultural infrastructure first.
That's a great way to put it. Building the channels for understanding before trying to build the commercial or diplomatic structures on top. It goes right back to that Gusheng insight, vibrating for belonging, not just for applause or transactions.
And this philosophy, this approach, leads directly to something he calls the leadership exchange, which sounds like a kind of internal check and balance system.
It is precisely that. It's the mechanism designed to keep the organization itself in that crucible state, to stop it from tilting too far one way or the other, to maintain that dynamic balance.
How does it work? What are the checks?
Well, he defines the corrective loop for each perspective. So when the West, with its drive for structure, speed, measurable results, maybe forgets humility, moves too fast, gets too aggressive, the East reminds it of silence, of the need for that hush before the gong. It forces a pause, reflection, a check on the why behind the what.
Okay, and the other way around. We talked about the risk of inertia from the East.
Right. So when the East might perhaps hide its voice too much in modesty or get stuck in tradition, resist necessary change,
Then the West steps in.
the West provides the push. It teaches it to speak up clearly, to apply structure, to use that courage to question, but constructively.
So it's this continuous, gentle friction, almost.
Gentle but necessary friction, yes. And the intended outcome is that leadership becomes less about top-down control, that rigid hierarchical model we often associate with the West.
And more
More about care, significantly more about care. Care for the people, the partners, the mission, the planet itself.
Okay, let's pause on care, though. Is that really a sustainable strategy in a hyper-competitive global market? Or is it, a nice-to-have, a luxury afforded by a CEO who's also a philosopher? Can care really compete?
Ting would argue, and argues in the source, that care isn't the opposite of effectiveness. It's actually the most robust form of control there is. He reframes it. External control, the command and control type, needs constant policing, constant effort. It's fragile. But leadership rooted in genuine internal care, that generates trust. It builds long-term commitment. The control mechanism becomes self-sustaining because people are aligned and motivated internally.
So it makes the system more resilient.
Exactly. And it ensures decisions aren't just made for the next quarter's results, but for long-term health, relational health, ethical health, systemic health.
That brings us right to the operational definition of presence, then. How it actually functions day to day at Lóng Tíng. Not just a nice idea, but an act. He's quite specific about what presence is not, isn't he?
Yes, and that's really important for clarity. He explicitly says, presence is not a strategy you deploy. It's not a corporate trend, like mindfulness was for a while. Something you adopt, then drop.
So what is it?
He describes it as a daily act of remembering, a constant, conscious recalibration back to a certain state.
And that remembering involves three specific things. Three components that any leader could potentially use.
Yes, three very precise, actionable components. The first one is foundational. Presence means remembering to arrive fully wherever your feet stand.
Arrive fully, meaning?
Total attention. Being completely here now, not mentally back in the last meeting or worrying about the next one. You can't solve a problem or build a real connection if you're fundamentally distracted. Non-negotiable presence.
Okay, that makes sense. Component number two.
The second introduces that essential humility. It's remembering to bow to context before claiming certainty.
Bow to context.
It means acknowledging the complexity of any situation. It demands deep listening, situational awareness, before you jump in with your brilliant, probably Western-structured solution. The Western courage to question has to wait for the Eastern courage to listen first.
Listen first, then act. Got it. And the third component. This one feels like it gets to the core of the leader's inner quality.
It does. It's understanding that empathy is not softness, and this phrase is brilliant precision of the heart.
Precision of the heart. Okay, we definitely need to spend a moment on that.
Yeah.
Because empathy in business is often seen as, well, soft, maybe even weak, or getting in the way of tough decisions. How does precision change that?
Precision injects effectiveness, doesn't it? Accuracy, focus. If empathy is just vague softness, it might feel nice but be totally ineffective, maybe even counterproductive. But if empathy is precision,
I mean,
it means the leader needs to apply the same rigor, the same sharp focus they'd use on a complex financial analysis, but apply it to the human context.
so it's about accurately diagnosing the real issue is relational,
Yeah.
emotional, structural,
Right.
and then delivering the right response with almost surgical clarity, not just offering fuzzy sympathy.
Precisely that. True empathy, precision of the heart, requires that deep, still focus we saw in the Kyudo master. It means understanding exactly what's needed in that moment. Maybe it's a precise intervention. Maybe it's setting a precise boundary. Maybe it's just offering a precise moment of supportive silence. It's effectiveness, but guided by deep human understanding, by wisdom.
That's a powerful reframing. And the final piece of advice he offers, the sort of whispered legacy for future leaders.
It pulls it all together. Do not lead from noise, lead from listening. Let titles fall silent.
Let titles fall silent. Because the real work, the real connection, happens beneath that surface noise.
Exactly, because ultimately the entire philosophy, the entire enterprise hinges on one core realization.
Which is
The bridge we're all looking for between East and West, past and future, strategy and soul. It's not some external structure we build out there. The leader is the bridge. You are the bridge. You unite these forces through that constant, disciplined, daily act, being fully, precisely present.
So we've journeyed from the philosophy's roots, seen how it's applied in the business.
Yeah.
Now let's look at the formal structure he created to map this ongoing internal journey. The cycle of presence. You mentioned it's conceived as a quiet circle, a rhythm.
Yes, it formalizes that breath metaphor we keep coming back to. It's not a linear path with an endpoint. It's a continuous, flowing pulse.
How does the pulse work?
Awareness flows into action. Action then necessitates reflection, and reflection loops back, renewing awareness. It's the cycle of inhale, hold, exhale, prepare to inhale again. That's how you sustain leadership without burnout, without losing the plot. You can't just keep acting. You need the reflection, the renewal.
And it's not laid out like a typical ladder or hierarchy, is it? It's mapped onto a compass.
Right. 4 stages, like 4 seasons or 4 cardinal directions. And crucially, presence itself isn't one of the stages. It's the still point at the very center, the eye of the storm holding it all together.
Okay, and this framework helps organize his body of work too, right? His
Yeah.
books, studies, even the podcast we'll get to.
Precisely. It shows how all these different pieces fit into one coherent cyclical journey for the leader. Should we walk through the 4 stages, see how the direction links to the function?
Absolutely. Let's start at the beginning, the point of initiation. Awareness, which he maps to the north.
Okay, so north. Think the pole star direction, a fixed point, clarity, vision. The book associated with this stage is Global Leadership Insights 2030.
Insights 2030, so future-focused.
Very much. This is the opening of the cycle. It's where the external vision, understanding the global landscape, where the world might be heading, meets the leader's internal consciousness. It's the foundational stage where strategy absolutely must meet soul.
What does that look like in practice, strategy meeting soul?
It means before you make that big strategic bet, before you pivot the company, the leader has to ask the deep questions. Is this move aligned with our core values, with my own ethical compass? The North demands you know where you stand, why you're moving in a particular direction, and what principles are guiding you into that future.
So it's about making sure the Western drive for clarity and structure is actually morally grounded, rooted in that Eastern long view.
Perfectly put. Insights 2030 provides that conceptual map of the complex terrain ahead, forcing that initial alignment.
Okay, vision established in the north. Then we move east. Direction of the rising sun, new beginnings. This maps to action.
Right. East is about momentum, taking that awareness, that consciousness, and putting it into motion. The associated work here is the Global Leadership Study Companion.
A companion guide, so very practical.
Highly practical. If awareness north is the map, action east is the journey itself. This stage focuses intensely on turning the insights into tangible practices. How do you actually do this? Through deliberate reflection, through ritual, and through shared practice within the organization.
Interesting mix there. Ritual sounds quite Eastern, while shared practice feels maybe more Western, structured.
That's the synthesis right there in the action phase. It uses the structure of the West, the companion guide provides a framework, but it insists on the rhythm and reverence of the East, introducing ritual to embed the practices and prevent burnout.
So it's not just acting, but acting consciously, reflectively.
Exactly. Effective action in this model requires a structure for continuous learning and refinement. You have to keep observing the action, making sure it still aligns with that ethical vision set in the North. It's the structured application of the stillness principle act: observe, adjust, act again.
Okay, north awareness, east action. Then the cycle turns dramatically south. Often the deepest, hottest point, peak summer maybe. This maps to realization.
Yes, and this is arguably the most challenging stage and the one most often skipped or shortchanged in conventional Western leadership models, which don't typically prioritize deep internal processing.
Right. What's the work associated here?
The book is Breath of the Dragon. Realization is all about achieving transformation through profound stillness.
Transformation through stillness.
Yeah.
How does one actually do that? It sounds paradoxical again.
It is. And this is where the wisdom of the East, particularly traditions like Zen, really comes to the forefront. The source material talks about how each koan becomes a mirror for awakening.
Koans, those Zen riddles, right? Like, what is the sound of one hand clapping?
Exactly. They're paradoxes or questions not meant to be solved logically or rationally. The point is to absorb them, sit with them, until the analytical mind kind of gives up. Short circuits.
So the goal here is to break the leader's over-reliance on just intellect, on just figuring things out.
Precisely. The Karyan forces a confrontation with your own mental limits, your ingrained assumptions, your ego's need for answers. The realization stage, south, is like the internal furnace. It's where all the experiences from the action phase, all the insights from the awareness phase get processed, digested, integrated deep within the leader's being.
Changing them fundamentally.
Changing them at a fundamental level, yes. This is the stage where that Q-do principle, being still enough for the world to move through you, is truly cultivated and achieved. The leader moves beyond knowing they should be present to simply being present. It's deep, embodied understanding. Spiritual mastery, almost.
Wow. Okay, deep work in the south. And finally, the cycle completes in the west, setting sun, where the journey bears fruit, casts a long shadow. This is legacy.
Yes, the West represents completion, reflection on the whole cycle, and considering the cumulative impact of the journey. The fourth book title says it all: The Sacred Space of Leadership. This stage is about carrying presence outwards into its ultimate application beyond the leader themselves.
What does legacy mean in this specific framework? Is it about building empires, monuments?
Not primarily, no. Legacy here is defined much more by ethics, empathy, and crucially, planetary care, global stewardship. It's about taking that integrated consciousness, that deep alignment achieved through the North, East, and South stages, and applying it responsibly to the world.
So it's about ensuring the leader's entire journey contributes to sustainable caring systems, moving beyond just personal or corporate success.
Exactly. The sacred space of leadership is a result of achieving that internal coherence, presence at the center, and then using that coherence to structure the external world in an ethical, caring way. That's the legacy.
So the whole cycle of presence, north, east, south, west, provides this complete system. Vision meets soul, awareness. Insight becomes practice, action. Stillness brings transformation, realization. And presence shapes the world, legacy, all held together by presence at the center.
You've got it.
And it connects right back to that breath metaphor, doesn't it? Inhale vision, hold into action, exhale into realization and legacy, pause for renewal. If you skip the exhale, the reflection, the next breath is shallow. The whole system falters.
Beautifully summarized. That's the rhythm. And, the author clearly understands that in our world, a philosophy like this can't just live statically on a page. It needs to breathe, to have a voice in contemporary forms.
Right, which is where the Lóng Tíng Enterprises podcasts come in. They seem to act as the ongoing sound of this philosophy.
Exactly. They ensure that dialogue is continuous, it's dynamic, and it's highly accessible. It keeps the bridge building active.
And it really is like a constellation of sound, isn't it? Not just one monolithic podcast, but different series. And looking at them, they seem almost designed to echo the different stages of the cycle we just discussed.
I think that's absolutely intentional. Each series seems to carry its own specific light, reinforcing different facets of presence and the cycle.
Okay, let's touch on a few. There's one called Leadership from the Breath.
Yeah.
It seems pretty directly linked to the foundational awareness stage, the North.
It does, doesn't it? It focuses right on that core principle. Leadership begins with listening. that internal stillness that's the root of true awareness. It's the how-to for cultivating that stillness. The rituals needed for that first step of the cycle. How do you actually listen effectively, internally and externally?
Makes sense. Then there's Journey to the West. This sounds more outward focused, maybe linking to the action phase. Cultural application.
I think so. It's described as an active vision using music and humanity. It's about reimagining the Silk Road, not just as history, but as a living dialogue now, using cultural journeys, artistic collaborations, tangible actions to build those connection channels between Asia and the world.
So using culture as the action to build the bridge.
Precisely. Then, expanding on the more structural side, the North and East, they have an audio version or extension of Global Leadership Insights 2030.
Taking the book into dialogue format.
Right. Expanding that written awareness stage into an ongoing conversation. It explores empathy, presence across different cultures, showing how that complex vision from the book gets debated, applied, challenged in real time. It moves the concept towards action by discussing shared practices and real-world examples.
Okay. What about Dragon's Eye on Culture? The title sounds intriguing, maybe aligning with that deeper internal realization phase, the South.
I think that's a strong connection. Dragon's Eye is about looking beyond the visible surface of companies, societies. It explores art identity as mirrors for transformation, getting into those hidden cultural drivers, the things that shape us subconsciously. It's almost like applying the Coconian principle to culture and identity, look deeply, question appearances, to force an internal awakening.
That fits. And for leaders who are very grounded in the market, in business structures, there's a dedicated series on branding. Where does that fit? Maybe legacy.
That feels right. It connects to legacy, the West. Because the core question it asks is, how does identity meet integrity? How does the internal meaning, the presence you've cultivated, actually show up authentically in the organization's living presence in the world?
So branding isn't just marketing spin here.
Not at all. It's the evidence of internal coherence. Does the external promise match the internal reality? Branding, in this context, tests the integrity of the bridge the leader is. Get that right, and you secure a positive legacy.
And on top of these specific series, they have specials and the main podcast channel acting like a living archive, right? Pulling all these threads together.
Yes, ensuring that every single project, whether it's a book, a concert, one of these podcast dialogues, it all comes back to the same fundamental purpose.
Yes.
An invitation to pause, to listen, and to reconnect.
And it's not just reconnecting with the ideas, is it? It's connecting, as he constantly emphasizes, with the breath beneath them, that underlying rhythm of life itself.
That's the source of presence, ultimately.
So quite a journey. We started with that paradox, the Western clock versus the Eastern pulse.
Yeah.
We walked through the personal stories, the Gusheng, the Kudu master, saw how those insights were operationalized at Lóng Tíng Enterprises.
Yeah.
And then we mapped the whole internal process with the 4-stage cycle of presence.
It's a rich tapestry, and I think the core takeaway, the thing that resonates no matter what field you're in, is that presence really boils down to the courage to be completely here, fully arrived. It's the force that unites the apparent opposites east and west, structure and flow, strategy and soul. It elevates leadership from just a set of skills you perform into a way of being.
And that ultimate definition that connects the personal journey back to the practical reality. Leadership, in the end, is simply presence shared.
Exactly. You can't share what you haven't first cultivated within yourself, right? And the cycle provides that structure for cultivation.
The value is in that internal coherence first. That stillness at the center of the compass guides everything else.
Precisely. The clarity there enables the precision everywhere else.
Which, I suppose, leaves us, and leaves you listening, with a final thought to reflect on. Something to integrate into your own daily rhythm, remembering that Ting suggests you are the bridge. So if leadership truly is rooted in listening, as he argues, and if that bridge is internal, what specific noise in your own life, maybe it's the constant chatter of that Western clock demanding more faster, or maybe it's the inertia of comfortable habits or unexamined traditions, what noise must you consciously silence day by day to really hear the world breathing through you, to act with that precision of the heart he talks about?